We are Rogue Media Sports.
Reese's peanut butter cups are the greatest, but let me play devil's advocate here. Let's see. So, no, that's a good thing. That's definitely not a problem. Reese's, you did it. You stumped this charming devil.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It is Matt Mosley. It is the Doomsday podcast, and
a rare opportunity for people to see you without your sunglasses.
I know I didn't bring my sunglasses tonight. I have my regular glasses. I'll slip those on in a moment. But Ed, so much to react to. We've already, in just the hour or so since the game ended, we've been on the phone. We've checked in with our sources. And when we say, what is that? Is it on your phone there?
It's on my phone, yeah.
You're holding up, yeah.
People from the Carolina Panthers, Cowboys people. We got it.
So many things. The information is pouring in, and you'll be able to not only hear our podcast, you'll read about it tomorrow in the morning news. I'll have a big column up. No. I've secured this for us, Ed. And it's good. It's good to be back together. A tough way for the Cowboys to begin this season, and a lot of anger after a 16-8 loss. They've had some bad losses to Carolina in the past. I think back to the playoff game at Parcells' first year. That was a rough loss. Ed, this was a tough one to experience, to watch for fans. And I would say after a season, an off season of, can Zeke go back to being Zeke? Can they look more like 2016? Ed, this looked at times today even worse than 2017, I would say.
Well, I can think right now of three people who were thrilled with the performance and the outcome by the Cowboys: Dez Bryant, Dan Bailey, and Wade Wilson, all of whom left in the offseason against their own volition. So I think they were pleased with the outcome. Dak Prescott, another poor performance throwing the football, averaged just 5.8 yards per attempt, and then Ezekiel Elliott, 4.5 yards per rushing attempt. Only the Cardinals and the Bills scored fewer points in week one than the Cowboys. 8 points in an hour of football.
Yeah, that's pretty embarrassing, and you just hate to see something like that. You hate to have to watch it, and then finally, and I wonder if the Cowboys fans will take any solace in the fact that in the fourth quarter they finally put up some points, got moving a little bit. Thought the defense did a few good things today to keep them in it, but all in all, a pretty dreadful performance. And just a reminder, Ed, it's not easy to win in this league if you decide to really not have any playmakers at wide receiver or tight end. You are raising the bar, and just the level of difficulty, the degree of difficulty, a significant amount if you go into a season like they have. And I would just say pretty much anything that could go wrong went wrong for the Cowboys today.
Well, the good thing is nobody of consequence suffered any significant injury that we're aware of at this point. I guess Randy Gregory may have had a concussion, but we don't know where he is anytime during the course of the season anyway, so not a big deal. But the thing I've been saying all along is I think this might be the first time in a very long time that the defense will outperform the offense on a regular basis. And I think that played out today. The problem was, as well as the defense played, it could not overcome the utter offensive futility. And that's not what we were told to expect by Jerry Jones and the other, advertising maestros over at the Star. This was going to be an exciting year of, big offense.
Youngest team in the NFL, Ed. It is. We're going to bring you some insight on why Scott Linehan decided to go upstairs, why Jerry skipped out on talking to the media, something that is so rare. I mean, this never happens, and it happened, and much more on some of the things you mentioned. Mayer. Is that what we call our man, Mayhair? They were calling him something different today on the broadcast, but he will not be long for the world if he's missing 48-yard field goals. Ed, let's get started. Our first reaction and your first reaction, and you'll get to experience this as we roll out all sorts of information. It is the Doomsday Podcast. Frito, please play the music. And there it is, Ed, and let's jump right into it. Sometimes we like to stretch our legs, not tonight, not after this debacle of a season opener. Ed, just to provide a little context, if you would, as far as all the Cowboys openers that you've covered over the years, do you remember anything more sort of deflating? Do you remember a Cowboys opener? They've had some tough losses. They've had some unbelievable. Eli came in, opened a new stadium, and absolutely beat them right away there. But that was at least an exciting game. Is there any season opener that you can think of that felt any more deflating, you think, to Cowboys fans than what we just witnessed tonight or this afternoon in Carolina?
I would say that my quick thought reaction to that would be, and maybe this is an unfair comparison, but Jimmy Johnson's first game as the Cowboys head coach in 1989. They'd had this wildly successful preseason. They won the Governor's Cup.
That was a good preseason team.
Against the Oilers at the time. And they went to New Orleans, and they lost 28-0 in the Superdome in a game that was not that close. And I was standing in the tunnel between the field and the locker room as Jimmy Johnson, red-faced Jimmy Johnson, was walking toward the locker room and off the field. And above me was a guy shouting, "Hey, Jimmy! Hey, Jimmy!" And Jimmy wisely ignored the man and continued his march purposefully. And the guy was relentless, and he said, "Hey, Jimmy! Hey, Jimmy!" So finally, Jimmy looks up at the guy, and the guy says, "It's a little different when both teams are getting paid, isn't it?" Referring to his outlaw Miami Hurricanes national championship season. So I would say that may have been a little bit more brutal than this.
Okay, that was a rough start, but boy, if we're wondering about Jason Garrett's future, and we kind of think this is a put up or shut up year, this was not a great start at all. And Ed, let's start where I think everybody would want us to start. Let's start with this offense. Rough night for Dak Prescott. In fact, one of probably the roughest performances of his young career, and boy, now I start to see some of these stats come in. Ed, this is the 7th time in the last 9 games he has thrown for less than 200 yards. Didn't really get it going, was not on point early on. Ed, before we try to explain to people, I want you to try to explain why Scott Linehan decided ever since he's been here, he was on the sideline, why he went up to the press box. I want to get into that, but I want to go back to one pass that when you think about what's emblematic of what this game was like, there was a pass in the second quarter of this game, and obviously the Cowboys did not get on the opponent's side of the 50. Ed, that was first time, by the way, they've gone in the first half without getting inside, at least running one play inside the opponent's 50-yard line since 2002. First time that had happened. But Dak had a chance. Blake Jarwin, the tight end, you're familiar with his work, Ed, from out of Oklahoma State, had come open on the seam. Dak sprints out to the left. He leaks out there, and he throws on the run. And, Ed, the ball comes up woefully short. And that was really a sign that, man, this was going to be a long game, and it wasn't going to get much better.
Well, it was the first chance that they had to make a big play in the passing game, and I think the mistake, it's a difficult throw, obviously, for a right-handed quarterback to be running left and try and throw the ball 30 or 40 yards down the field, although it certainly gets done in the NFL, and he's capable of it. I think maybe the mistake he made was in trying to throw on the run instead of resetting himself, his feet, and making sure he made a good throw. He didn't. He rushed the throw. His footwork was poor, and his pass was woefully short, and it was a great opportunity lost. And, we heard a lot in training camp about how this was going to be an explosive group of players that they had, and they were going to do some, unconventional things. And but at the same time, Scott Linehan, who you mentioned, and we're going to talk more about here in a second, made it clear that while they want to be a good throwing team, and Jason Garrett said at the owners' meetings, that's the thing we have to be. We have to be a good passing football team. We want to have a run-first, tough, physical identity with Zeke Elliott and this offensive line that we've invested in, but we have to be able to be prolific throwing the football too, and they weren't in either capacity really today. And I think the easy thing to say is, well, Zeke Elliott's always been a slow starter. His first 2 games every year, have not been magnificent. But he works his way up and becomes very prolific as time goes on. And you combine that tendency with the fact that he didn't play at all in the preseason, and you're not surprised. But my concern is that this is going to be their running game against teams with a good defensive front as long as Travis Frederick is out and as long as Connor Williams, the rookie left guard, it can be overpowered by guys like we saw today and Donatari Poe and K1 Short, and next week it's Damon Harrison with the Giants. So to me, that's the bigger concern. Clearly, the Cowboys did not make a big investment in the preseason, and that probably was a factor in their performance on offense in this particular game, because Carolina took a much different approach, and we can discuss that at length as well.
Yeah, we certainly will. And Ed, one of the things as we watch this thing, and Zeke was just he was bottled up. It really did. I think a lot of fans, and a lot of the anger has to do with when you feel like you're sold a bill of goods. Like, hey, we're going to change this up. We're going to be a different offense. We're going to move people around. And I'll just say this. One of the things I kept coming back to, and I've written stuff for the Morning News. I've talked to it to folks about on this podcast, that this is one of the most nondescript group of wide receivers and tight ends the Cowboys have really ever assembled. And in a sense, it's kind of these Jason Garrett types. It's like the undersized, hey, let's get Beasley in here. Let's get Tavon. He's a guy that's kind of, we can maybe trade a 6-rounder for him, see if we can get anything out of him. Hearns, he had one good year. Let's bring him in. This is like, it was kind of like, maybe these guys will look good in camp, and somebody will, until you get them out there in a game, you don't know how they're going to be. And right now, we don't know what Gallup's going to become, but this is a really nondescript group they put out there, and we didn't see anything in the first half for sure. The first 3 quarters that made us think, oh my goodness, they're going to be able to kind of scheme this thing up and maybe do some exciting things. They did really nothing to take some of the pressure off Zeke. And right now, every team that lines up against them looks at this film and goes, well, why don't we just come in and shut down Zeke?
Well, I think you go into the Carolina game, especially without Travis Frederick, your center, for the first time since you drafted him in the first round. And against Carolina, it's going to be a challenge to run the football, no matter how good the offensive line is, no matter how good Zeke Elliott is, because of the focus that they put on that. And over years, it's been a long stretch of games since they've allowed a 100-yard rusher against them. So you're in for a tough day running the football. And even if you're successful running the football, generally you're not going to score a lot of points just running the football. And so I thought the thing that they needed to do, and right, the whole offseason they talked about, we're gonna accumulate speed. We're gonna get some playmakers. We're gonna get some guys who can make some big plays in the passing game on this team. And I don't know that they did that. Tavon Austin's the only really fast guy that you see, right? Rico Gathers is supposed to be some freak in the red zone who can, body people and score touchdowns. Not even active again. So they're not giving him a chance. They just seem very close-minded about what they're willing to do. And they had no vertical passing. I cannot think of one time in the game that they ran a go route or a deep slant that they threw. Not one time. And they said they were going to throw, Zeke Elliott was going to become a bigger factor in the passing game because he's one of the most prolific receivers out of the backfield that there is in the game the last 2 years. And he had 3 catches for like 17 yards. I don't think we saw a lot of creativity on offense. I don't think we saw a lot of different disguises and formations and bunches and, route combinations that were uncommon. And kind of that's what we had been told to expect, right? I mean, I remember just the other day, Stephen Jones said, hey, Scott Linehan's developed a lot of things offensively that we've not shown yet in these meaningless preseason games that we are going to unveil in Carolina. And a lot of it involves Tavon Austin, who had no catches.
Do you think maybe they just wanted to save some of this for that home opener against the Giants, just not show too much? on the road. They didn't feel good about beating the Panthers. So maybe wait another week and then unveil some of this, Ed.
I think that would be a gross miscalculation now, because I think the Panthers are significantly better than the Giants.
Yeah, I wrote something down, Ed. I know you like it when
unusual.
I do this. I've got that is unusual. No, look at this.
Can you still read
Ed,
it?
look over here. This is not a
Wow, it looks like you charted the game.
I chart games.
Oh, nice.
Love to do it. Ed, I wrote this down. Our buddy Troy Aikman, who you covered for many years, had this to say in the second quarter, and this was even after Beasley actually caught an 11-yard pass. And man, they were getting so close. Actually, this was the second half. I think this was when they actually got inside the 50-yard line. But he made the statement. And Troy's not a guy that just goes off half-cocked, like, I'm just going to come out today. And
He's the biggest advocate of Jason Garrett that there is in football. He got him the job.
I'm just going to kill these guys. Okay, here he is. I've not seen any creativity, is what he says. And earlier in the game, he was hitting that same thing, and he basically said he doesn't see anything in this offense that looks like it does anything to put pressure on the defense. And Ed, I just got to say, he made an interesting statement also. I sometimes read between the lines with Troy. He made the statement, hey, I think Scott Linehan, a lot of people thought he wouldn't be back. But he's back, but everybody else on the offense has changed out. So he went over the list of they got this new receivers coach, and I think Joe was kind of helping with that. Sanjay Lal went over the whole offensive staff. But I think Troy was sort of making a point. And again, I'm connecting the dots. It's like they kind of somehow Linehan was saved, and then Linehan got the opportunity to sort of bring in all his guys. In a sense, I think Troy was making the statement, okay, Linehan, you got your people, and this is the kind of performance you're having right now. Now, on top of this, Ed, always love it when you're able to quickly get behind the scenes and bring us some insight, start firing up those text messages that you like to do. What in the world was Scott Linehan? And again, I love it when in a broadcast they're just kind of like say it almost in passing. Well, Scott decided to go up to the booth, and I'm sitting there, Ed, did we miss this? When we were in California and spending all this time with Scott Linehan, did we forget to talk to him about this? But no, Ed, I think this didn't really come up in the preseason. Suddenly, after those years in Detroit, these 4 or 5 years he's been with the Cowboys in Dallas, Scott Linehan decides to go upstairs. What are you hearing on that?
And he's their play caller, and obviously, normally, if you're down on the sideline like he's been the entire time, he's been the Cowboys offensive coordinator, Jason Garrett's hand-picked offensive coordinator, by the way. He's down there because he can interact with the players. He can't do that if he's upstairs. But he entrusted Kellen Moore, the youngest member of the coaching staff, to handle the interaction directly with the players, and he went upstairs to call the plays. And it's something, while he hasn't done it in Dallas, he didn't do it in Detroit, he apparently did it the entire time he was a Vikings assistant coach, so it's not a completely new thing. But I think the thought process was that the staff on offense is new, that Kellen Moore has a good relationship with Dak, and that he could interact appropriately with him and help him during the course of the game on the sidelines. Now, whether they continue to do this or not, this arrangement, I think, remains completely uncertain. They could certainly reevaluate it and change their minds, and if Linehan feels strongly about it, go back down to the sideline and call the plays. And I can't imagine that his work from up there today did anything to make him feel better about being up there next week against the Giants.
Yeah, and to leave, by the way, Ed, I'm not nothing against Kellen Moore, but a first-time quarterbacks coach. You're kind of basically saying,
he was a player last year.
He's good. He just got through playing. He's got a great relationship. Let's just leave him down there, send the offensive coordinator up. I don't even know if they put anybody in a good situation in that way. Kellen, Scott Linehan puts himself in a weird spot. Jason's down there just clapping. Other than just clapping, one thing he loves to do, and Frito's filming some of this,
It's a clap of reassurance.
It's a clap. He loves to
clap.
He's
reassuring people that even though things are going poorly, they're going to be all right.
Yes. But also, what's that thing he does where he's always the players all know to come off the field, after a series and stuff, or after they miss a field goal. What is this thing he's doing where he's come on back here, guys? Is he afraid they're going to go to the other sideline? That's another thing that just drives me nuts.
When you say they've reconfigured the coaching staff, we mentioned the receivers coach being new. Derek Dooley obviously gone, but the guy that Kellen Moore replaced is a longtime veteran former quarterback and a longtime Jason Garrett, assistant coach, in Wade Wilson.
And a huge advocate for this quarterback, by the way.
And he was upstairs previously.
Yes.
And Linehan was downstairs. And, obviously, given he played 16 or maybe 20 years in the NFL as a quarterback, he knew what he was seeing from up there from a coverage point of view and could relay that to the sidelines. Maybe they didn't feel comfortable that Kellen Moore, so early in his coaching career, was capable of doing that and delivering accurate information.
To your point, I think you're totally right about that. It reminds me, you remember when Bill Callahan really didn't know the verbiage and they said, okay,
he really didn't care.
we're gonna let you call the plays now. From what I recall, Wade was basically having to translate for him. He would say kind of what he wanted, and Wade would call the play.
That was forced on Jason by Jerry Jones. Jerry
Correct.
forced
Jason didn't want to do that.
to surrender play calling responsibilities to Bill Callahan. That did not go well, and eventually Jason got play calling back. And
Before we move on to some of the other stuff, to your point on somebody not getting in Dak's ear, and do we trust Kellen this early in his coaching career to be the guy down there sort of talking to him? And
by no means are we trying to say Kellen Moore lost the game.
No.
Scott Linehan
it's just
lost the game because he was upstairs instead of downstairs.
If you play this poorly, you got to kind of look at everything, and that's something new. That's something different. So you're right. We don't want to blame the whole thing on that. I did have a personnel person call me, longtime scout in the league, and basically say, why wasn't anybody getting in Dak's ear at that very moment that he underthrew on that seam route to Jarwin, reminding him, you've got to get your feet under you. Now, I'm sitting there just like, the guy made a bad throw. I don't know what's going on. But that's what the scout was saying. Somebody has got to remind him and be down there making that adjustment. Dak, you've got to get your feet under you before you make that throw. Now, later in the game, I think it's fourth quarter, Ed, he's making a throw. I'm trying to think who he threw that one downfield to. That may have been, he threw a lot of passes to Beasley. He's rolling left, and he makes a perfect strike. He throws. So obviously he's capable.
Jason
of
Garrett's
throwing
a
on
former
the run.
quarterback. He could make that point. He's on the sideline,
but he's busy clapping and trying to pep up the kicker.
And one more thing on the whole failure to create any kind of a vertical threat, and that's really something that they lacked last year too. They had it with Dez when he was at his zenith, but as his performance declined, they lost that component. And the way they're playing now, they're telling everybody in the league, we're going to run the football on first down. And they just crowd the box. And the Cowboys have no way to relieve the pressure and get better numbers and attack down the field. Looking at it right here, Dak Prescott has thrown deep balls, 20 yards or plus in the air, just 8.6% of his attempts in his career. That's the lowest of 29 qualified quarterbacks. So this has been a 2-year now plus issue with Dak being able to get the football down the field and threaten defenses and soften them up at least, making them aware that they need to cover the back end of the field. And otherwise, you're going to get crowded boxes, and without Travis Frederick, it's going to be that much harder to run the football.
Yep, it certainly is. Ed, if you'll indulge me for a moment, I just want to thank.
I've indulged you to this point.
Plenty. No, I've indulged you as well.
I don't mean just today.
You're making strong points. I appreciate that. Thank you. Let me just take a moment to thank Hodges Capital. For years it was known as the Hodges Fund, and Don Hodges and Craig Hodges got this thing started. Craig and Clark are the Hodges brothers now, and I'm telling you, Ed, they've been incredible partners, and you're a high wealth kind of individual. One of the things I love about them, no, you're still, Ed, don't even play that. You're still doing fine. One of the things they do, they'll take care of the high wealth folks, but folks that are looking to try to retire and just put some away. I'd love to do that someday. I'm not real good at that, but that
surprises me.
I know. They are unbelievable at kind of putting people in the right situation. They've had these equity funds, Ed, that have done incredible, and that's one of the reasons Craig gets invited. And by the way, one of our friends, Trey Wingo, Craig Hodges happens to be his college roommate at Baylor, of all things. So there's always a Wingo connection.
They have any classes together?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, they lived together. They were both Phi Delts, kind of the wealthy fraternity there on campus. But what's the big business channel? CNBC. They fly Craig up. Say, Craig, will you come up to New York and do some TV for us? And so that's how these are the kinds of people we're working with. I want you to
supporting us.
they're partnering with us, but supporting us. They're doing a lot of things with us. Ed, say thanks to Hodges Capital for what they're doing for us.
Thanks.
I don't know why you're laughing. I just want you to give them a hearty thank you.
Thanks to Hodges Capital for being our partners and for following me on Twitter and Facebook. And I'm very mindful of what I put on there that you might see.
Yeah, exactly. And Ed, I think it's
you've
time
invested
for you
wisely.
I think it's time for you to start investing wisely, and Hodges Capital will be there for you. Okay, Ed, let's get back into this Cowboys thing, and there's a couple of different directions we can go. One thing I want to do is let you have an opportunity to go off on what we saw from Zeke Elliott, a man last year that was such an enormous part of what they were supposed to do. It didn't happen because of his suspension. This was the year we thought, can they flash back to 2016? Can they recapture that magic? Now, some of this, Ed, you know, was to be expected. Connor Williams. We saw him get dominated by KK Short or Kwan Short.
Very well done.
And then at center you got. I mean, you know, I like this guy. I like Looney. I mean, he's just kind of a big fun guy, and sometimes he can get out. He's actually pretty athletic, but he's not the guy that they're missing right now. You know, he's not going to be that guy. So you have to, and Ed, they just didn't do enough there. What did you see, and even as you kind of made your calls, you knew what the Panthers were going to try to accomplish. Were you surprised at all they had this much success slowing down Zeke and that he wasn't able to get on track really until late in this game?
Well, I thought it was going to be tough for them to consistently run the ball at the Panthers. And, talking to some of the Panthers coaches after the game, they felt good about their matchup up front with Frederick out. They felt like that the rookie Connor Williams is making a very difficult transition. I mean, he's going from college left tackle to NFL left guard. And when we talked to Scott Linehan at training camp, one of the things he said that made him feel good about that, having a rookie there, was that he had a Pro Bowler on his left and a Pro Bowler on his right. And now he doesn't. Now he doesn't have a Pro Bowler on his right. He has Joe Looney, who's best known for wearing a cutoff shirt and pretending he's Zeke Elliott, which is all hilarious until he snaps the ball. So Carolina, they thought they could win that matchup, and they thought they could control the Cowboy run game. The thing that surprised them is kind of what we've already discussed, which was they thought there would be a much more vertical element to the Cowboys' passing game that they might have to contend with, and obviously they didn't. And that brought a lot of joy to somebody who was obviously watching the game, and on Twitter, a guy named Des Bryant, who turned down, got cut by the Cowboys and turned down a deal with the Baltimore Ravens and met with the Cleveland Browns so that he could be on Hard Knocks, and now he's not playing at all. And
do you have any of his tweets?
I did jot down a couple of his. Did you interact with Des on Twitter at all? I saw him interacting with a few members of the media. Did you have any back and forth? I may have gotten one or two back, but okay. I consider those to be off the record, and I won't share them here.
Okay. I think we might have gone DM Des, but go ahead, Ed. What did he say publicly?
Well, the first thing he said that got my attention was kind of alluding to the allegations he made about the predictability of the offensive play calling. And he said it's kind of cool calling out all the signals and knowing which route players are about to run. And then when Troy Aikman made the point on the broadcast and said, quote, "I'm not seeing any creativity," Des on Twitter said, "Y'all need to go criticize Troy Aikman." And he had an emoji of a mic drop, because obviously people thought he was out of line criticizing his former team and coaches. And then at the very end of the day, somebody tweeted, "If the Dallas Cowboys still had Des Bryant and Dan Bailey, they win today, no doubt about it." And Des tweeted, "Real fact."
Ed, I think you could have a stronger emoji game, by the way. You are a prolific tweeter. I think emoji's kind of your next step. I mean, you know how to do them.
I do.
But I'd like to see more emojis out of you. I'd also like to...
I don't always see well enough to know exactly what each of them means. Like all of the little smiley faces with, slight differences in countenance or whatever. I can't really discern what one means versus the other.
I like that. I like that shush thing I did with the Colorado kicker. I found a shush emoji that I was able to bring out from that. Ed, anything before we kind of go to the Cowboys defense? Is there anything else on the offensive side of the ball you want to hit on? We hit Zeke. We've hit some of these offensive linemen. I mean, this was a pitiful offensive performance, and of historic proportions.
Yeah,
when you have to reach all the way back to 2002 and you can't get it across midfield, and I'm sure I don't even have to have Garrett's quotes in front of me. One of the things Garrett said, I'm sure, was we got behind the chains. That's a very popular.
Well, he did have a lot of
phrase.
penalties.
They were in 3rd and 17. They were in 3rd and 13. That's not a good place for this team to be in.
Tyron Smith had 2 early penalties. Lael Collins had 2 penalties. So they did create some bad situations for themselves. I think the best thing you can say about this game from their point of view is, hey, the defense played great and really well enough to give them a chance where they did almost nothing for 3+ quarters to give them a chance to have the ball at the end of the game in a 1-score contest. So I think that's the only good thing you can take away from it. The offense was really poor.
It was only a 1-score contest, by the way, because some guy, on the extra point, a guy moves his leg out. At first, I thought, that's the worst snap I've ever seen. It didn't even get close to that. I was like, how do you even do it?
Deflected off the guard's leg.
They come in a little closer, and we see it went off the guard's leg. And I like that kicker. Did you see the kicker back there? The kicker actually, during that scrum, tried to put a block on Awuzie, thinking maybe I'll spring him free.
Well, if Grammatica would have done that for Romo in Seattle, Parcells would still be coaching, and the Cowboys would no doubt have a ring by now.
Nice.
Romo wouldn't be in the broadcast booth. He'd be still playing.
Nice callback, Ed. Before you, please scroll to your notes on the defense before we get in there, and of course I'll have my massive amount of notes here to reflect upon. Can I just take a moment, Ed, to thank the lease lady, and of course I'm talking about Marie. You go to autoleaselady.com, Ed. And
a free car is waiting for me?
Ed, I don't know if it'll quite be free, but she gets you an incredible deal. I've known her for a good while now, and Marie does. And I want to say this again, Ed, this website. In fact, Frito, our fearless producer, was on the website the other day. Spent a little too much time on there. But autoleaselady.com, and he said to me, this makes it really easy. This is a nice site. She's also on Facebook. You can find Marie. And I'll just say this. This is someone who has made leasing a vehicle. Ed, I know you're like, I'll buy, man. I don't lease. But
I've leased a car before.
I don't know if you talk like that. But, Ed, she makes it extremely easy. I love leasing. It's just kind of nice. And then, hey, 2-3 years down the road, Ed, it's just like, hey, I want a new vehicle. Let's roll it into something else. They make it extremely easy and very, very affordable. I mean, Ed, in the podcast world now, I need things to be affordable.
What are you paying per month on that?
The Honda Pilot, Ed, a good fair amount for what I do in life.
Fair by whose definition?
Yeah, it is good. But hey, go to Marie, autoleaselady.com, and I promise you will love it. That Honda Pilot I put my wife in. Whoa, 3 rows. I don't really know why I need 3 rows. I just have 1 child, but still. Good to have all those kids going to dance together, and it is autoleaselady.com. All right, Ed, let's turn to the defensive side of the ball. The Cowboys certainly did not give up a ton of points, but that doesn't mean it was a great performance by any means on the defensive side of the ball. They did some nice things. I thought the secondary, for the most part, held up pretty well. You heard it on the broadcast. You heard Aikman talking about it. They made some plays. They did okay. The thing I was most disappointed about, as far as just from watching this thing and expecting, was seeing a guy like Sean Lee, friend of ours, guy that's a big fan of the Doomsday podcast. But when you kept hearing on the broadcast, well, he's scraping. Ed, you love a good scrape comment. He's supposed to scrape there. Well, what they mean when they say something like that, on one of these. Sometimes these announcers now kill you with an RPO, but there's also basically that's a zone read is what Cam was doing. He's basically reading the defense. He's putting the ball out to and he's going to look at the defense, see what they do, and he may keep it, he might throw it, he may run for it. Ed, what were the Cowboys doing? The linebackers were biting, the defensive ends were biting. Is this new? Did Norv create the zone read all of a sudden? I feel like we've seen Cam Newton perform this in the past.
Well, it seemed to be an interesting hire when Carolina hired Norv Turner, the longtime Cowboys assistant, who was a huge part of the great careers that Troy, Emmett, and Michael had individually, and the success of the Cowboys to win 3 Super Bowls in 4 years as their offensive coordinator. That he would go and coach Cam Newton, because he's never had a quarterback like Cam Newton. I guess the closest guy he would have in terms of being a runner would have been Alex Smith for the 1 year that he was up in San Francisco. But generally, he's had Troy Aikman, he's had Drew Brees, he's had Phillip Rivers, guys who aren't really running quarterbacks. And so that's a big part of Cam Newton's game. But obviously, Norv left those components in there and is going to implement a lot of base plays that they haven't had before and allow Cam still to be that unique running threat. I think he's one of the greatest running quarterbacks in the history of the game. And if you talk to teams that play against Cam Newton and the Panthers, the thing they always say is there's never been a quarterback in the league who has designed power runs. Now, the thing about this matchup that was intriguing to me, and you made the point, is how poorly the Cowboys played the read option early in the game. Newton scored the first touchdown on a read option. He had like 60 yards rushing in the first quarter on 3 read option plays that he kept the ball and broke contain. And the Cowboys are supposed to have, all this athleticism at the linebacker position with Damian Wilson and Jalen Smith and Sean Lee, and they seemed helpless. It was almost like they had no idea how to defend something that they themselves should see all the time, because Dak Prescott and Zeke Elliott run it all the time.
I do think, by the way, the best thing that happened to the Cowboys offense was seeing that option that worked so well against their defense that I do think,
oh yeah, we had that.
I do think you're right. I think Linehan was like, why don't we run one of those option plays?
And they scored on it.
And it seemed to work pretty well.
They scored on it.
Did you see by the way, speaking of those linebackers, you were mentioning a lot of them. Wasn't that odd that, we make this huge deal when Sean Lee's out, the Cowboys fall apart, and there's a lot of numbers to
support that.
In major parts of this game, I look out, 48's in there, 53's in there, the Wolf Hunter gets in there, and I got to say, I hope Van Der Esch, I think he will become a nice player for them. He barely played any in the preseason. The guy was hurt a lot of camp. Did he look a little deer in headlights to you? I was just kind of zeroing in on him, and he just kind of looked like he was kind of prancing around looking for a wolf pelt.
He never did anything that got my attention. And I had said going into this game that I think it really speaks to the improvement that Jalen Smith has made athletically in overcoming that knee injury and the nerve damage, and being exploited by several opponents last year when Lee was out with his injuries, that it said a lot about him that this first-round draft pick that everybody thought was going to come in and play right away and have a major role, went away for a month with a groin pull in camp, and we forgot all about his existence. And obviously the Cowboys had a chance to take any wide receiver they wanted in the draft. We talked about how bad they were on offense and no vertical passing game. They could have taken any receiver they wanted in the draft,
including the one that was playing for the Panthers.
Played today. Yeah. And he didn't play much. But that's apparently the guy they like the best. But I thought it spoke to how well Jalen Smith had come along. And, I think Jalen Smith had a decent game today. One of the things I like defensively was I think we're seeing Chris Richard's influence in a lot of ways. He's got these DBs, the corners, playing a lot of press coverage. Marinelli always liked to play soft coverage, back him off the ball. Marinelli didn't like the blitz. He didn't like to risk the big play. He used a lot of stunts up front, but he didn't blitz. Hey, the Cowboys are blitzing. They sent Jalen Smith and Sean Lee on the same play. So I think we're seeing Chris Richard have a big influence on the defensive philosophy of this team. And you got to feel good about the way they played on defense, even though I would suggest Carolina is not a real dynamic offensive team right now.
They have a very dynamic quarterback.
They have a couple of unique players.
And even McCaffrey's unique.
McCaffrey's a unique running back. Cam's a unique quarterback. But again, they don't do a lot with the passing game, and the Cowboys did even less.
Yeah. I think the Cowboys, if they had the Panthers personnel, they probably would have let Funchess go. I'm trying to think who else they would have.
Greg Olsen.
They would have let McCaffrey and Olsen go, or encouraged him to retire. And sadly, Olsen did sustain it looked like the same, perhaps, injury he had that kept him out a lot of last season.
9 games last year.
Oh, man, that was a tough thing.
That would be a
see.
huge loss for them.
And generally, you think the Cowboys might take advantage of his absence, but I didn't really see much of that. Did you see that player get hurt, by the way? It just came to mind. Number 60, there was Moten and Van Roten or somebody. There were two offensive linemen.
Darrell Williams, the right tackle?
Yeah, is that who got hurt?
Yeah.
Okay, did you see
Carted
what happened,
off.
how he got hurt? I thought that was crazy. That was at tight end, threw Lawrence into his knee, kind of after the play had been decided. And did you see Lawrence? I always find these kinds of things fascinating. After the fact, Lawrence is basically pointing at him like, you just did that.
Friendly fire.
Yeah, you just did that to your player, which
Right.
always...
He was already coming back from a knee injury. He'd missed almost all the camp and then just started practicing this week and was trying to play through it. And obviously, unfortunately, got injured. And if they lose Greg Olsen, they'll suffer for that. And maybe another point we can make about just how bad the offensive performance was for the Cowboys, because we haven't really emphasized that quite enough yet. Remember, the Panthers started the season without their second best defensive player in Thomas Davis. Perhaps the best linebacker duo in football is Thomas Davis and Kuechly, and Thomas Davis is suspended. So much like David Irving, but he's suspended for the first 4 games. So the Cowboys had that benefit and didn't take advantage of it.
Yeah, Kuechly was out for at least a couple of plays, but he got back on the field there
For the last drive.
Yeah, and so Cowboys. One point of emphasis I want to make here, and it sounds like you and Frito both disagree with me, or I just think Frito's kind of apathetic toward the whole thing.
He's still awake, though. That's kind of surprising.
No, I mean, I love having Frito in here, and he's doing fine. He's got
his microphone ready. He's gonna say something.
Love to hear from Frito, and love a good
sure that's
green
happened.
screen.
Has that happened yet?
No, we've heard from Frito. We usually kind of hear from him chuckling in the background. There's a play at the end of the Cowboys have to decide at the end of the game: do they go for it on 4th and 10 around midfield, or do they pin them deep because they have all 3 timeouts? And of course, it's not even the 2-minute warning yet. And actually, yeah, that's that. I think I have it right. Sort of second guessing myself there, but no, that's the situation. And my thought, I kind of agreed with the announcers there, and they didn't come that strong on it. My thought was pin them back deep. The defense has been playing reasonably well, and if you you've got a punter who's capable of making them catch the ball on the 10-yard line. If you get them back there, if you hold them, you call your timeouts, you get the ball back perhaps
somewhere around
fairly
midfield.
Close to midfield. Now, of course, you've used up all your timeouts at that point, but they got the ball back and didn't have any timeouts on their own 20. So, is that what lost them the game? Probably not. They were going to have to still score, go for 2, tie it. There was a lot that was going to happen. I have to kind of question Jason there, because the one thing I thought that he could kind of count on in this game was his defense. And in that moment, he said, no, don't really know if they can stop Cam. I'm going to go ahead and try to throw the ball downfield. And obviously, I don't know if you could. Poor Deontay Thompson, the guy caught 22 balls in his life, maybe for Buffalo or wherever he played. I don't think he was going to bring that pass down.
Well, you're counting on your quarterback to make an accurate throw. The play was there to be made, and Dak didn't make it.
Okay, so that's all.
So for me, it's hard to fault Garrett for poor strategy when the play was there to be made. He bet on his quarterback, and his quarterback didn't get it done for him there.
Well, that would keep the thing alive, but you're betting on a guy who had not gotten it done for much of the game. He believed in his quarterback, but I'm just saying, with a new set of downs, possibly at midfield, I like him better than taking a shot at 4th and 10, with the downside of that being they get the ball at midfield.
They already had the ball where when it was 4th and 10? It was 4th and 10, and
around midfield,
25, 30-yard line.
Who, the Cowboys? They weren't that. I don't think they were that close. I don't think they were at the 25 or 30. I believe they were. It was right around midfield.
36.
48.
48-yard line.
They surrendered the ball at the 48.
Correct. That sounds like midfield to me. From there, you could pin them back deep and then have an opportunity. Again, they scored 8 freaking points. I don't know if I love their chances. The only thing I'll say, Ed, they did, in the fourth quarter, finally find a few things that would work. That was the option. They basically had 3 quarters to study the Panthers' offense. And then
and see what was working against their defense, and then try to implement some of those things.
Yes, they used that.
But, to kind of finish this thing out where we started, we talked to Scott Linehan for like 50 minutes or whatever at training camp, and he talked about how Jerry had ordered the staff. In fact, he kept them home from the Senior Bowl, right? He kept them home, the coaches home from the Senior Bowl. He went to the Senior Bowl, but the coaches stayed because he issued an edict for them to go back and look at what some of the other teams in the NFL were doing and implement some of the ideas that would fit. And Scott told us that, well, that's something we do every year.
Yeah.
But obviously when the owner tells you to do it, you might attach a little importance to it that you usually don't. And he said, hey, we went back and we looked at what Dak did at Mississippi State and implemented some of those things. We looked at some of the top college programs are doing, and we brought in some of that. And as well as the NFL stuff, but where was it all today?
I don't know. It was awful. In the owner, and you've been covering this team for a long time, Ed, and I've been covering it pretty long myself. The owner decided to duck out today without talking to the media. This is the most media-friendly owner in the history of professional sports. Most likely, who's more accessible than Jerry Jones? And today they had the SUV waiting or the limo or whatever, and he got out of there.
I think he's going to follow the lead of another former owner of a professional sports team, Donald Trump. And instead of doing briefings and being available to answer questions, he's just going to tweet. He's going to tweet. So let's get on Twitter. Let's see what Jerry's got to say on his new account. But no, it is unusual when Jerry doesn't talk to the media after a game. He usually enjoys that. And usually he avoids the media only if some catastrophic event has happened or something has happened that he didn't expect, and the questions are going to be of the variety he's uncomfortable answering. And so I don't know if he was trying to avoid the questions about, Adam Schefter's report that there could be an issue about the eligibility going forward of Randy Gregory, who obviously also didn't talk today after the game because he suffered a concussion. And then when a player's in the concussion protocol, he's not required to speak to the media after a game like most of the rest of them. But you're right. Normally, Jerry, like if you're covering this team, the unique decision that you make after every game is when the locker room opens, are you going to walk right past Jerry Jones and go in the locker room and talk to the players, or might you go down the hallway and listen to whatever Jason Garrett's going to share in terms of deep insight? No, you're going to talk to Jerry because he's got the final authority and he says some crazy things.
He does, and it's one of the most unique situations. Ed, you can choose to respond however you want to this is just my observation. One of the extremely dysfunctional things about this team heading into the season, and I sort of felt this. Now it sounds like, you saw a horrible result, and now you're going to say all these negative things. But here's what sort of played out in my mind. We're sitting here like, wait, why is Linehan up top? What's he doing up there in the press box when he's not used to that? Here's, to me, what makes this, even before this game, extremely dysfunctional, is that I can't get my arms around, I don't think Jason Garrett wanted Scott Linehan to come back this season. And when you have a head coach who really doesn't, and again, this is not breaking news that he doesn't have the ultimate power like some head coaches across the league, but when you have a head coach who really doesn't have the power to say, I don't want this offense coordinator anymore, it can create some pretty awkward situations.
Well, what would make you think that?
Well, I just think that I think
Scott
Jerry
Linehan
stepped in.
Scott Linehan gave Jason Garrett his first NFL coaching job on a full-time basis with the Miami Dolphins when he was in Miami. And he had been a part-time assistant with Tampa Bay while he was finishing out his playing career with the Giants. But he hired him as his quarterback's coach, and that was a big move in Jason's career.
Yeah.
So I think, after we mentioned the Callahan situation, it was after that Jason basically said to Jerry, look, if I'm coaching for my job, then I want to be able to pick, and I can't call the plays, then I want to be able to pick the guy that is going to call the plays for me, somebody I have a relationship with and that I can trust, and he picked Scott Linehan. And I think if he didn't want Linehan to be the offensive coordinator in, again, another season where he appears to be coaching for his job, then I doubt he would have let Linehan replace Garrett's guy, Wade Wilson, at quarterback's coach with a clear Linehan guy in Kellen Moore, who has no experience. So I think that Linehan's here with Jason's absolute blessing, but I'm interested in
Let me give one more layer to this theory. if the head coach basically says, okay, we're going to keep Linehan. If let's just say, my theory, Jerry says, hey, you're going to keep Linehan. I'm sorry, you can't fire him. At that point, Jason says, okay, so Linehan's going to stay. Let's just let him make all these hires. Let's let Scott get whatever wide receivers coach, whatever offensive line coach he wants, whatever quarterback, get little Kellen in there, who seems to be his feel-good buddy that he's had with him since Detroit. And Ed, what if Jason can remove himself a little bit from the situation, and if this offense completely tanks, could just Linehan and everybody be blamed for it?
No.
And Jason could somehow survive?
No. If that was going to happen, then
don't cover your mouth.
Then Jason would have gotten rid of both the coordinators. I think I think Jerry put it on the two coordinators, allowing them to return, and Garrett allowing him to return, that the three of them have to figure this out, and they better have a good season, or all three of them are going to get blown out.
I think the saddest thing about this whole thing that tells you how dysfunctional the whole thing is run is the more like Chris Richard gets TV time, and the more he's over there getting like people talking about, look what he did, look at him lighting into people. Why can't Jason be more like
practice?
That? He wears cleats. He runs around. I think he might be one of the better DBs on not only on the coaching staff but of the players. But I think that stuff has a major impact on Jerry, and so at some point, I think Jerry's already worked out in his mind. I mean, this was bad enough today that it's crossed Jerry's mind, and that may be one of the reasons he didn't want to talk, who would be his interim coach this season.
It's one game.
I know
it's
is.
One game.
It was awful.
Against a good team. It's not. I don't think Jerry's already thinking about who he's going to replace Jason Garrett with. He obviously has a great fondness for Jason Garrett. He values him in a way that nobody in the Metroplex can possibly understand at this point, having, made the playoffs twice in 8 years. I think he'd be very reluctant to fire Jason Garrett. I think he's demonstrated that at the end of almost every year, that he's very reluctant to fire him, despite that being what the public wants. But yeah, it's one game, but it's an important game. It's worth noting that of the 104 teams that have played in Super Bowls, only 16 of them lost their season opener.
Whoa, Ed's going. Ed, you got anything else written down there? I like this kind of stuff. There was one other one you had brought up earlier that I kind of liked, but this is
about Dak throwing the ball down the field.
Yeah, what did you say?
It was he had the fewest attempts.
Yeah, I did like
percentage basis of any of 29 qualified quarterbacks.
Yeah, boy, that is rough.
And I think the other thing that
and we are probably some of the biggest Dak supporters, working in the media today.
Here, because there are still all these people who think that the Cowboys wrongly changed quarterbacks and cost themselves a Pro Bowler and a Super Bowl appearance by, letting Dak Prescott run out his rookie season even after Romo was healthy, ignoring the fact that Romo had barely played in 2 years. Was obviously so susceptible to injury that he decided not to play anymore after that season, and that Dak Prescott won 11 straight games at quarterback with this team, and that the locker room wanted Dak.
Yeah, I know, and Tony made the concession.
It's a hard
speech.
job we have here.
It is. It's very hard, and I think we're a pair that likes to show our work and really let people behind the curtain on what we do. Ed, it's been another fabulous week. We're going to come back strong next week. I'm sure the Cowboys. I'll be on at the. Are you going to be out there for when are your Westwood One assignments?
It's not one
start?
of them. I do have two I'm going to do 5 games for Westwood One.
Okay.
Which is one more than I did during the regular season last year. 2 of them are actually Cowboy games.
I think that means they thought you did a pretty good job. They're just by next year you'll have like 7.
Well, I don't know because I have found recently that in broadcasting it isn't necessarily a meritocracy, and so I don't know that I earned more opportunities, or maybe they just think I'm cute on radio. I don't know. Maybe.
You do. You're doing fine. I do like radio allows you, unlike a former colleague of Frito and I worked with a guy who, when he became a big sideline guy, he felt the need to put like a suit and tie on and all that. And what I think you quickly realized is, why not be comfortable if I'm not going to be on film in any way? Why not wear my Travis Matthews stuff? By the way, I want to apologize, Travis Matthew. I've kind of fallen in love with another brand recently, and I'm not trying to get a new sponsor, but thank you, Cricket, for what you're doing in my life.
You should know that Travis Matthew, which is my favorite outfitter for golf and casual wear, is opening up a shop, the boutique up at the Legacy, Shops of Legacy.
Oh, good. Travis Matthew joins the Doomsday podcast. I hope
Hopefully
Ed,
we can go live from up there.
Let's go live. Let's do some live things. Ed, anything else you want to add? I mean, this has been a tough start. Cowboys fans come to us. They come to us for insight. They come to us for. Is there anything else that? What I love about this doing the show with you is we're literally, and I think Frito would support this. We taped this thing about an hour and a half after the game was over. We had both already talked to several people that were on the ground there, but I mean, you're in touch with the opposing coaching staff. Ed, I just appreciate that kind of insight, and you just don't find it elsewhere. You certainly don't find it on some of the, I don't want to name any local sites or anything like that, but I'm just saying I appreciate what you do.
Well, thanks.
It's good having you back.
You try to build up resources and credibility around the league when you go to these games, and you hope that people will respond when you ask them a question, and fortunately, that was the case this week.
Yeah. It's most weeks, and there are some teams that Ed will have people that don't like him as much, but it's
usually this one.
That's right.
This will probably be one of those weeks.
The one we talk the most about. It is the Doomsday podcast. I want to thank Hodges Capital. I want to thank Marie at the leaselady.com. Just does a wonderful job out there. Thank Frito Nation Productions. Good to be back in our North Dallas studio. We have another studio down the road. Which one do you prefer, Ed? Are you liking our tollway or the one up in Allen?
Well, the tollway one is a little easier for me to access, given where I live. But the other one, I think, is a nicer facility and has probably better equipment.
Yeah. Oh, so you there's too much of an echo in here for you, Ed. I'll say this, and you can't see it. This is kind of a weak ass green screen compared to the one he has out there. He's got a great green screen. No, we appreciate
people
Frito.
Should be looking for us on Facebook, right? Aren't we?
Here's the deal.
Our Facebook page.
We're really. I'm not a big Facebook guy. I never have been. I think it's the leading cause of depression in our society. But we do have a Facebook page. We're going to put a lot of videos up there for you. We're gonna really kind of hit that. And then we also have opened up a YouTube channel.
Oh, have we?
Yeah, we're going to have a YouTube channel, and we're going to put a lot of stuff up there. Frito does a great job on all that, by the way. He's got all this new equipment, and I don't know who's buying this stuff. I know I'm not contributing to any of this.
When did he start doing a great job on all that?
No, he always does a good job on us, but I'm just saying, I mean, the green screen is not good, but everything else, no,
it's
he
not
does.
What Pete Delkus has.
No, have you seen what Channel 8's doing? I don't want to get into that, but lately they're showing the green screen for some reason. It is the Doomsday podcast. It is Ed Werder. It's Matt Mosley. It's Mark Frito Friedman. And, look for Ed on my old show. I don't even really want to give it too much attention, but you'll be on there on the radio show on 103.3. Yeah, kind of a silly station, but good guest sometimes. Ed's going to be on there from, 6 to 7 tomorrow night?
I think it's 5 to 7.
Monday evening, 5 to 7. Ooh, you should charge him double for that. And then I'll be on Ducey's new program tomorrow night. That thing is called Ducey for Real or something. I don't know. It's a new 30-minute every night at 10:30 show. And I'll be on there touting this podcast. And I'm going to shave. I'm going to get a shave before that.
Hope you get a haircut, too.
Ooh, I thought my hair was looking pretty good. It is Matt Mosley. It is the Doomsday podcast. Thanks to everyone who's been a part of this. Continue to follow us, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts. What else, Frito? Anything else I need to tell everybody about?
TheDoomsdayPodcast.com is another place you can go.
We got a new website. God, Frito is doing an incredible job. Thanks to everyone who has been a part of this. For Ed, for Frito, for the entire Doomsday Nation, it is Matt Mosley signing off. Good night, everybody.
Reese's peanut butter cups are the greatest, but let me play devil's advocate here. Let's see. So, No, that's a good thing. That's definitely not a problem. Reese's, you did it. You stumped this charming devil.
The living room is where you make life's most beautiful memories. But your sofa shouldn't be the one remembering them. The new life-resistant, high-performance furniture collection from Ashley is designed to withstand all the spills, slip-ups, and muddy paws that come with the best parts of life. Ashley high-performance sofas and recliners are soft, on-trend, and easy to clean. Shop the high-performance furniture in-store or online at ashley.com. Ashley, for the love of home.